We all want to feel peace in our lives. Peace in our choices, our beliefs, our relationships, and our environment. I've learned that this desired contentment is often found through holding on to less. When we pare down what we own, what we consume, and what we value, we're left with what's intentional, a personalized curation of what is important and true and useful to us. I'm Shannon Leyko, and you're listening to Paring Down, a podcast aimed at helping you declutter not only your home, but any area of your life that's overwhelming. Here, we're having interesting and honest conversations about the physical and mental clutter that drowns out what truly matters to each of us. And together, we'll learn how to pare it all down, not for the sake of perfection or becoming rigid, rather so we can move through life with less overwhelm and more joy, wisdom, and peace. Hey everyone, welcome back to Paring Down. Today you get to hear from Diane Boden of the Minimalist Moms podcast, which has been around forever. It's one of the OG minimalist decluttering podcasts. So you are in for a treat. In addition to her successful podcast, Diane has also authored a book in 2021 by the same name, Minimalist Moms, and her words and advice have impacted countless individuals and families looking to simplify their lives and find more meaning in the things that matter most. She lives in Columbus, Ohio with her husband and 3 beautiful children. And today we are talking you through how to have some more minimalist mindsets in the new year. As always, I'm talking more about minimalish living rather than staunch minimalism, but minimalist mindsets will help you move through this year with a lot more intention and really get you motivated to hopefully get rid of some of that stuff that you've been meaning to declutter. So I really hope this encourages you as we kick off this new year. Please enjoy this conversation with Diane Boden of Minimalist Moms. Diane, thank you so much for being here. It was such a pleasure to be on your podcast. So doing a little swap is just so much fun.
Yes, I'm so glad to talk to you. I really enjoyed that conversation that you and I had. So I'm glad to get to know you better in this one. And hopefully we can inspire some people here with the new year.
Yeah, exactly. I cannot believe January has arrived when this comes out. We're recording still a little early, but when everyone's listening, it's already January, which is insane. Welcome to 2025, everyone. Diane, would you tell everyone a little bit about yourself and, who you are, what you're all about?
Yeah, so I'm Diane Boden, and I'm host of the Minimalist Moms podcast. I've been doing this for about 6 or 7 years. Actually, the podcast started 8 years ago. But I've taken it over and made it more of an interview-based show, just learning from guests of all sorts. And I think that minimalism has become for me kind of an umbrella for living a life of intention. So talking about simplicity, sustainability, all that good stuff. But I have 3 kids and we live just outside of Columbus, Ohio. And what else? I homeschool my oldest daughter. My one son is in public school. My other son is in private school. So just juggling so many different things. But I also will say that minimalism has kind of allowed me to manage everything because I don't think I could do, or I guess just wear all the various hats that I wear if I was overwhelmed with the burden of my things.
100% agree. Like, there's no way I would have this podcast. I've said that before. Like, there's no way this would even have come about because I wouldn't have had the time or the mental brain space to make it happen.
I remember you saying that. I think you said that on my show, just that sometimes it appears that we have it all together and no one does, but it is a lot more manageable when you're not maintaining the inventory of all the various things. Like, that seems like something we can control. So why not take control so we can start to manage the other areas of life?
Totally. Like, we can't control much in this life, so might as well control what we can. Yeah. And, it's interesting, as you said that you started the podcast or you took over the podcast around 7 years ago. Mm-hmm. That was before the big kind of cultural push of minimalism that came about during COVID and when Tidying Up with Marie Kondo came out and the home edit and all of that stuff kind of made decluttering, organization, all of that a little more mainstream. So I'd love to hear your story. Like, how did you become interested in living with less?
Yeah. So my husband and I were married about 13 years ago, and it wasn't long after that we were in my parents' basement searching for something. And he turned and looked at me and said, look at all of these things that are now in boxes that were once your dad's hard-earned working hours. And at that point, I had to become a little bit more frugal once we got married. It wasn't just, my money wasn't my own at that point, but I also didn't bring a lot into the relationship because I spent all my money on things, and I spent all my money on obtaining the newest things. And I always like to say, like, I do like nice things. I prefer quality over quantity, but it was just kind of like, why do you have this closet full of clothes when like that's your hard-earned working hours, Diane? So to me, it was that correlation of what am I working for? We're in this new marriage, and what are we going to be working towards as a unit? And with our kids, we want experiences over things. And it's funny because we didn't necessarily debrief that light bulb moment that I had, but to me, again, he was kind of like already living. And I don't know, sometimes I think men just have it easier in that way. They can live with far fewer things than we can, as a generalization. But for me, it was just like, okay, I don't want to waste my time working for something that is just going to end up in a box.
Yeah, that's such a good mindset to kind of keep you motivated. I feel like if we just declutter because we're like, oh, I'm annoyed with all the junk in my house, which is fair. I mean, I think a lot of it, can stress us out. But when we see it more so as like, this is wasted time and money, and like, that's going to keep you going in the long run. It's funny you say that about men because my husband's the stuff guy in our house. So he wants to hold on to everything. I know, but I do think that is more rare for sure when I talk to my friends. Usually the guys can let go of the stuff, but not in this household.
Yeah, no, and I've definitely noticed that too. A lot of men that I know, I would say just more so like the nicer things, but not as many things. But again, that's just a generalization. We all struggle with something.
Well, and this can all go back to a whole conversation about the patriarchy, but not in that kind of a way. We love men around here. But I remember talking in one of my episodes with Lacey Woodruff. She owns a basic shop out of Birmingham, Alabama. It's a sustainable clothing apparel store. And we were talking about, even in the fashion world, women have been conditioned to buy cheaper clothing and therefore needing to replace it and staying on top of trends. And so it becomes kind of more trash, right? Like you just look in your closet and you're like, this isn't in style anymore, or this is falling apart or whatever. Versus men in the fashion world have been kind of conditioned to, once you can make a certain amount of money, you just buy some super nice suits, and you have like 4 suits that are high quality, and those will last you for 20 years, And so I think that that also does play a part outside of fashion. As women, I don't have all of the like, high level, deep answers about it, but there's something about the way women have been conditioned to spend their money on things that don't last. And it's a waste of our money. And it already adds to, the wage gap and to all of the things that women have an uphill battle to manage in the workplace because, we're having to take care of the kids still traditionally, even though we're supposed to be able to work at the same time. It's a lot. And then we're wasting our money on things that don't matter. Like as women, I think it's so important that we respect ourselves and empower ourselves to buy quality over quantity and to make sure that our hard-earned money is going towards, like you said, the things that actually matter to us, and not what this consumer society has done to waste our money and put it back in other people's pockets, probably dudes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no. And I mean, you do have to pick and choose. I don't know. For some reason, I wanted to, I'm like, I'm going to share this. I spend a lot of money on skincare, like on my face. To me, that's what is most forward facing. Everyone's seeing my face. So I think every person needs to prioritize what it matters for them. And to me, I like spending money on my skincare as opposed to a Stanley cup that is just trendy because someone told me to spend this much money on a cup. And I mean, no shade if that's what you like to do, but I think we all do just have to make choices. And it is interesting with going back to the suit thought, we have created the society where it's like women need to have a new outfit every time they show up at the office. I'm not in corporate. I don't live in New York City. However, I'm like, if we could take our power back and like, either get 4 suits yourself or buy 4 dresses and just have them on rotation. Steve Jobs did that. Like people have uniforms, but I think it is so counter culture, so counter, especially like in fashion. And some people really like clothes and they want to spend their money on that. But I feel like there is going to be someone that needs to take the first step if we want to see change. Otherwise, we're just stuck in what we've created. I don't know if any of that makes sense with you.
No, it makes perfect sense.
Okay.
I always think about Kate Middleton. I'm like, listen, if Kate Middleton can repeat outfits, so can we.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Like she has her favorites that you see her wearing out and about. So, well, anyway, as we are in 2025, this kind of new year, new you messaging is going to be super strong, as it always is. And I see the positive and negatives of that. I'm curious, what is your take on setting goals and resolutions for the year?
I think that with goals and resolutions, to me, I'm like, you can start today. You don't necessarily need the flip of a calendar year to start to implement change. And I think specifically for me, I struggled with eating issues in my 20s, and it would always be this like Last Supper mentality of saying, I'm going to start tomorrow, but tomorrow never came. And so to me, I'm like, no, when I finally took control back and was able to conquer some of that, it was, I'm going to make my next meal. Like, I'm not going to starve myself because I've eaten too much. I'm not going to overeat because I have enough. Like, I have enough and the next meal will be enough. So to me, I'm like, I have to get really honed in, mindful of the present moment. And that is all I have. I'm not guaranteed tomorrow. So there's a part of me that loves goal setting. I love the change of a calendar year. Like, it does feel great, but I'm like, to me, the most sustainable change that I've ever made, it always is in the next moment as opposed to waiting for some arbitrary date.
I love that you use the word sustainable because we all know the pattern of
Mhm.
having these big lofty goals or resolutions or whatever you want to call them. And
Mhm.
then come February or even earlier, they're out the window. And I do agree. I agree that listen, there's nothing wrong with like starting in the new year, except
Mhm.
that if you have that mindset, then what does that mean you're doing right now? Are you not living according to your values? Are you not, making choices that support whatever you want to see succeed down the road? Like, that doesn't make sense either. If those things are actually important to you, then starting today makes the most sense. I mean, maybe like starting new eating habits doesn't make sense on Thanksgiving.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
there's room every day to be making choices that support the kind of habits or the kind of goals that you have in mind.
Mhm.
And just like stuff, I think I do this too, but we can overdo it with planning or with our
Mhm.
goals, right? Like last year I was like, on once a month I'm going to like learn something new. So I'm going to, get out my mom's sewing kit in February, and then in March I'm going to like teach myself some guitar chords on YouTube, and then in, whatever. And I got to February and I was like, I'm out. I'm done, because I
Mhm.
overdid it. And we do that with, with our stuff as well. We're like, I'm going to declutter everything, all at once. I'm going to do one room, this week, and the next room this week. And then we burn ourselves out and it doesn't happen,
Mhm.
So, with any habit, we have to kind of take it little steps at a time. But before
Mhm.
we get into maybe actually looking at minimalism and decluttering as a goal and how to go about that in a sustainable way in 2025, I'm curious about you. Do you have any goals for this year?
Um, so it's interesting. I guess I'll just share this here with your podcast listeners because I think when this goes live, it won't necessarily be news to my audience. But I do have a goal of I'm shifting Minimalist Moms into a new podcast called Clear Intentions. And kind of like what I said at the beginning, this just seems like the next iteration of where I am as a human of saying, yes, minimalism was a tool for me to take back, whether that was time, take back space, take back mental clarity. But now to me, I'm like, there are people like you that do it really well, that do it better, even like on your social media and what you're sharing. And I think now I have the ability to have conversations that help me grow personally. And in every conversation I find myself in, I take something away that can be applicable to my story and my journey in this life. So, with all of that said, my big goal for the new year is to do this shift well. Maybe it won't be successful, but I just feel like I don't want to pretend to maybe fully have it all together or be this perfect minimalist because it can be rocky sometimes. But I want to just exist, uh, maybe with the veil taken down in a more vulnerable way in what I'm doing. So I'm sorry, that's not a shameless plug. It's something that I'm very passionate about right now.
No, it doesn't seem like a shameless plug at all. It's so
Okay.
true. It's really reflective of you being a dynamic human that says, I'm allowed to change, right? You're not
Mhm.
saying that the lessons you've learned through minimalism and kind of using that as an umbrella don't remain. In fact, you're saying, I just want to take it even deeper. And I think that's a
Mhm.
really, really cool goal. I'm rooting for you.
Yeah.
I have no doubt that it will go well. You know what you're doing.
Yeah. Thank you.
um, but for those who do want to lean more into that minimalist type of a mindset in the new year,
Mhm.
let's start there actually with the minimalist mindset. How would you describe a minimalist mindset to those who are looking to get in that headspace?
Yeah. And it might not even be as much minimalist as, and I'm sorry if we talked about this on my show, but for me, I really like to, maybe at the beginning of every year or every season, write down the things that I've been making priority in my life, and then write down my values. And then I look and compare where is the disconnect? Am I actually doing those things that I say I believe to be true? So I think when it comes to minimalism, you have to get, uh, like discover what's essential to you. And so to me, that's putting pad or pen to paper and to write these things down. And I think with goals, kind of like we were talking about with starting today, I think if we say, like if we have an arbitrary goal and we're like, oh, I'm going to start that in a few weeks. To me, if you're not willing to start today, whether it's baby steps of reaching out to someone to join the PTO or to take a few minutes to read 5 pages of a book, if you're not willing to do that in the moment right now, right to like today, you're not going to do it in a few weeks. I just think that we are not necessarily honest with ourselves about what we really want in this life. We think that we need to be a certain way, or we need to spend a ton of time in our kids' school. Like, again, whatever it is for you, but it's like, is that really realistic? So to me, writing those things down and getting the clear intention for what you want, I think is really helpful in minimizing this abundance and this noise that we think we have to do.
That's such a great way of putting it. Because
Okay.
yes, a minimalist mindset is saying I'm decluttering all the things that don't matter to me, whether it's physical possessions or otherwise. And you make such a good point that sometimes we kind of trick ourselves into thinking that we want to do something a certain way. Like we think I want to be a good mom, and so I know I want to join, let's say, the PTO, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or I want to, do CrossFit because those people have great muscles. You know what I mean? But then when you really think about it, like what actually do I want? Then oftentimes it's not these more obvious things that the world is telling us that we want. Like being a good mom has nothing to do with being on the PTO. And being a good mom has nothing to do with whether or not you homeschool or you send your kids to public school or you send your kids to private school, as you obviously know, because you have one in each. It's interesting. We do kind of try and convince ourselves that we want certain things. So the first step, especially if we're looking to goal setting in the new year, is to get honest with yourself. What actually do you want? Like what makes you happy? For me, I love my children. I don't think I should have to defend that or say that, but I'm going to say it because my next sentence is going to say, but I really love that they're all in school now because I love working. I love doing this podcast. I love the creative side of social media. I love writing. I'm working on my book proposal. I love editing. I mean, I really love it. I thrive. I'm happy. When they call me and tell me I have a kid sick at school and I need to go pick them up, I love them. I'm going to give them big squeezes and I'm going to make sure they're okay and get them some hot cocoa. But I wish that they were at school so that I could work, and that doesn't make me a bad mom. I had to get really clear with myself. What do I want in life? I want to be a good mom, and I also want to work. And I had to figure out what that looks like for my own life. And that's going to look very different for people who those things don't match up for them. You know what I mean? And so I appreciate that you said that, getting honest with yourself.
I think, and also I'll just say this, people just want to be content. People do want to have enough. It is nice. I will find myself in random groups of people that have a lot more than enough. And that's kind of nice. It's like, yeah, I want to make money. I want to be successful, but do I have, this is the a huge part of goal setting and obtaining those goals. Do I want to put in as much as maybe they have to get to that level? And that can be with money, that can be with your fitness. If I really wanted to squeeze into a size 2, which I've never been, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to have to not eat. I'm going to have to run quite a bit. I'm not willing to do that. So again, I think we trick ourselves into thinking, like what it is that we actually want when we just want to be like happy, whatever that means to us, content. And we don't want to be striving in a way that's uncomfortable necessarily. Like uncomfortability is good, but like, we don't want to be doing that for the remainder of our days. We just want contentment. So
yes.
Yeah. That's another thought.
Have you read John Mark Comer's book, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry?
Yeah. Yeah.
So in it, he kind of gives a similar example. Like he would love to look like the people that live next door to him that have these, slim runners bodies and,
Mhm.
the whole thing. But he does not want to wake up at 5 a.m. and go run every single morning, right? Like we
Yeah.
have to recognize that if we're looking towards a certain goal, it means that we have to really embrace the path of getting there. And if
Mhm.
you don't want to embrace that path, then that's not the right goal for you. This is like, I
Mhm.
used to live in New York City and I was pursuing Broadway.
Oh, that's right.
And yeah, and I love singing, right? Like when I was in the area or the phase of my life when I was getting paid to sing, like I was a singer at Busch Gardens Williamsburg. I did 7
Oh.
shows a week, and I loved it. Or I was paid to be. I was in some regional like professional theater, and then of course in New York. I'd have those kinds of singing gigs, especially as Miss New York, right? So if you pay me to sing on stage, I'm your girl. I love it.
Mhm.
But you know what I hated, Diane? I hated the audition process. Hated it.
Mm. Mhm.
I'm not even going to get into all the reasons why, but I realized after 2 years in New York that if I want to pursue this as a career, I need to enjoy the whole process, because singing on stage and booking a gig lasts usually from like 3 to 6 months at the most. And
Yeah.
then you're back in the audition cycle. So that's the
Mhm.
part that you have to be comfortable with. And I wasn't. So I think that is a very wise piece of advice, to kind of see it as the path and the journey of getting there.
Well, and Michael Easter wrote a book called The Comfort Crisis. And I
Yes.
guess that's the devil's advocate to what I just said is it's okay to be uncomfortable. And especially as Americans, like we are very comfortable with comfortability, like whether that's air conditioning or heat, like these are modern like miracles we are fortunate for them, but we are just uncomfortable, like maybe getting out, going on a hike when it's 30 degrees. And it's like a little bit of that is good for you. Like testing that muscle, because there are going to be things that come up. This isn't necessarily with goal setting, but there are going to be things that come up in life that you can't choose. You don't get to choose. You're going through them. So I think working that uncomfortability muscle with goal setting, with disciplining ourselves is really helpful when we face those moments that are absolutely going to come our way.
Totally couldn't agree more. Like it's always a little bit of balance. So even with the things that you want, right? Like I
Mhm.
know that I enjoy doing this podcast, and as well as I do, probably better after 7 years, that it is not always a cakewalk, right? Like it's a lot
Yeah.
of work, and sometimes it takes waking up early, going to bed late, being really disciplined about whatever you need to do in order to get things out, right? Like that's with any job that you work hard at. Like there
Mhm.
has to be that. And I do love that book, especially the piece about getting outside and like pushing yourself
Mhm.
physically.
Mhm.
Big believer in that. I would love to get Michael Easter on the podcast. Have you had him before?
No, I thought about reaching out to him for my new show for sure. Michael
Yeah.
Easter, I'm putting it out there.
I know. He's like
Anyone knows
kind of a big
you.
deal. We've briefly like talked in DMs, which is very cool to me.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
But anyways, yeah, he's great. All right, so we're kind of back to this minimalist thing, though I love
Yes.
getting off topic a little bit, because I think all of this, like you said, it all plays into a minimalist mindset. It's all about
Mhm.
intentionality,
Mhm.
and that's huge. What are some things that you would warn people about who decide that this is the year they want to declutter their house, they feel ready, they are sick and tired of the mess, or whatever their reasoning is? What's actually something you would warn them about?
I would say don't overwhelm yourself with moving through your whole house. You've said that on the show before. To me, the smaller steps that we take, honestly, even pausing this podcast or putting in headphones and going through right now as you're listening, get rid of 5 things. I challenge you to do that. Again, put your money where your mouth is. If you're saying this is what you want, show yourself that this is what you're going to do. And to me, then we have that like little bit of momentum to continue to go through our house. But I think I do like ripping off the Band-Aid of getting rid of things, but I think when we take everything out, we're just overwhelmed, or there's too much sentimental attachment, and then we don't end up moving the needle because we're just paralyzed with decision fatigue of what to get rid of, where to put it, where to take it. And so to me, I think people just bite off way too much sometimes, and don't end up having any progress because they're overwhelmed.
Yep, 100%. So, on the other side of things, if someone does want to declutter their home this year, where do you suggest that they start?
I'm trying to give an answer maybe that you haven't given. I say the bathroom, the entryway, the side table. You know what? If you are someone that's regularly in your car, let's start in the car. That could be a fun
Ooh.
thing. That's a different answer than I've given before. I really like to have little containers or systems. I'm not doing this well right now, but I have like a box in my trunk of donations that I usually have, a box of things that have made their way into my house that need to be returned to the original owner. Kind of just setting these things up. I do have like a bag of books in the middle of my boys so they can read those books. Things obviously get out of control, but like starting to declutter your car, I don't know. For me, I'm in my car quite a bit now that we live outside of Columbus, driving to and from all the time. I don't know. That could be a fun place to start. Again, just nothing with sentimental attachment. If you want to know where to start, don't start with the baby clothes. Don't start with your high school memorabilia. Don't start with someone like a dead relative that you can't go through all their stuff. That is not the place to start. Again, I'm sure that you've said all this, but I think those little, like, we just want the small wins so that we can eventually get to the place where we can tackle those areas and it's not as difficult. But I think even for me, once someone does get to that point where they can start to declutter the sentimental items, exposure therapy of sorts, of going back to it and going back to it, it just kind of releases that grip that it seems to have on me. Specifically, it's with my daughter's baby clothes. I was able to like greatly reduce the amount that she had. 4 years ago, I wasn't able to do that. I was like, okay, I'm going to get rid of a few things. But also, this is still like a thing. The people in North Carolina that were devastated by the hurricane, I got a bunch because they're truly like rebuilding. I mean, even when this goes live, people are rebuilding their lives. And so I think if you have a purpose too, when you're getting rid of your sentimental items, like I got rid of a ton of baby clothes to send down to North Carolina to some people that I knew were taking them down there. And that feels like, I don't know, just a good deed. If someone believes in karma, I don't necessarily believe in karma, but like it just giving back in that way helps the anxiety, I guess.
Totally. I think that the way we get rid of stuff is absolutely helpful when we struggle to get rid of stuff. I actually yesterday did a Goodwill run and I didn't feel great leaving there. And usually I do not like villainize or demonize Goodwill. I think when you are decluttering, get it out however you need to. And I had taken some time to go through. So my kids had decluttered a bunch of stuff before the holidays that was in the guest room. And so I went through and I put it in different piles. Like some of it I wanted to take to the Children's Advocacy Center, right? Like that's a more thoughtful place to take it, but it also has higher requirements, right? Like it needs to be like new. And then I had some that I was going to give to friends who I knew had kids, around the same age or whatever. Then some stuff was truly trash. And then I was like, okay, the rest I'm going to take to Goodwill. And I was a little overwhelmed just because there was a lot that we were getting rid of, which is great. Like our thresholds change. And so what I was getting rid of this year, like you said, I wasn't ready to get rid of last year. And so it kind of surprises you how you're able to continue to declutter. But I had a fair amount of my own clothing that I decided to get rid of. But I was at the point that I was getting rid of stuff that I still like. Like it was clothes that I really liked, but I just realistically wasn't going to wear again because it kind of only fit one, I don't know, like a vacation vibe, or I just had too many or whatever. But I still really liked the clothes, but I was kind of like too tired, frankly, and this is real life, like to go take it to this separate place that I tend to take my nicer clothes called Save the Closet. And it goes to people who actually have been affected by not just Hurricane Helene and Milton, but any major event like that. They take the clothes directly to the people who are in need. Wow. And so I feel great when I take my stuff there, but I was like, Mama's tired. I need to do one trip. So I'm just going to bring this to Goodwill. And as I was pulling away, I even, as someone who does this all the time and it like talks about decluttering, I even felt like and I had to say out loud to myself, Diane, like this is maybe embarrassing, but out loud as I was pulling away, I was like, it's gone now. There's nothing you can do about it. You know what I mean? And now I feel great. I'm good. My closet's a lot happier. Our home is lighter. There's good stuff. But it is true that especially if you're starting out, like someone like me, I would say is more of a veteran declutterer at this time, and it can still be hard on our hearts, right? So if you're new to this, don't do that to yourself. Find a way to get rid of it in a way that's not going to make you sad.
It was so funny. My sister went to Goodwill. I think it was Goodwill just yesterday. And she said the man came out and was like, I'll take that. And he's like, I don't want any of that other stuff. Like, I don't know where you need to take that. But she just thought it was so funny. She's like, where do I take it if they wouldn't even take it at Goodwill? And I'm like, I don't know.
I know. It's tough. Well, the amount that goes to Goodwill that ends up in the
In the
landfill
landfill.
is
Yeah.
tough. But then I don't like to, talk about that too much because then I don't want people to feel so guilty that they keep it in their house. And the truth of the matter is whether it is in your house or it is in a landfill, it is still on planet Earth. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like when you die and go to heaven, what do you think is going to happen to all the stuff in your house? It's not going to magically like become compostable. It's,
Mhm.
you know what I mean? That's where it's going to go then. So why bog yourself down with it for the next 50 years? But at the same time, it is important to try and make those better choices that it can be more upcycled and used secondhand. And I always say, listen, it has a better chance of being upcycled or used by someone else from Goodwill
Yeah.
than it does in the back of your closet.
Yeah. And also use it as, I always say this, use it as anecdotal evidence to say, this is not what I want to continue to do frivolously, thoughtlessly, bringing things into my home. That was a bad choice. That was me. And now I'm going to make better choices. I'm not going to if people stopped buying things at Target every time they walked in there, Target wouldn't be producing as much. There might be a period of time where they're continuing to produce as much. But if we as consumers stopped doing it, they wouldn't want to waste all that money in creating. And then we might actually move the needle with how many things are on planet Earth. So again, that's a large group of people having to do the same behavior. But think about your reach, my reach, everyone that's like talking about minimalism, sustainability. Like if people actually started following through with, again, what they say they want to do, we could move the needle. It might take 10 years, 15 years, but like, let's get there.
Yeah. Well, and the needle is already beginning to move, just like to
Yeah.
encourage people that if you think to even 10 years ago, very few companies ever mentioned sustainability or eco-friendly practices. But
Yes.
because so many consumers now are concerned about the future of our planet, we
Yeah.
actually have the whole problem of greenwashing now, where so many companies are saying that they're doing eco-friendly practices, but maybe they aren't. But to me, that's a good sign. It means they know that that is important to the consumer. So we're already seeing the needle move there.
Yeah.
And a company, a business's number one goal
Mhm.
is to make more money for their
Mhm.
investors and then, for the bottom line. And so, like you said, they are not going to continue to waste money if people are not buying. What they would have to do is change their practices. How do we make more money? Well, people don't want to buy a bunch of stuff that's going to end up in the landfill. So we need to offer products that we know are not as whatever, they're not going to cause as many problems, not as much plastic or whatever it is. They will change those practices. And it
Mhm.
is proven because we've already seen that needle start to move. Now, when it comes to the amount of stuff, it will change because people are not willing to spend $10 on this like little cute Target section at the front of the store. And
Mhm.
so you're going to see prices go up, but the quality is going to go up and
Mhm.
that's not going to bother you because you don't need to buy as much of it anyway. You don't need 5 of the little $5 dinky things. You want one $25 thing that's going to last you for the next 15 years,
Yeah.
So gosh,
Yes.
I went into Target for the first time in
Mhm.
probably 6 months yesterday.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And I walked around and I was so tempted. I was like, oh my gosh. And then I had to remind myself, like, my daughter has enough clothes, even though these dresses are really cute. And also, all I could see was like plastic, plastic, plastic,
Mm.
waste, waste, waste. It's so cute. But
Mhm.
would this little item look, if I saw that item at the top of a trash pile in the landfill, would I still
Mhm.
think it's as cute? I literally had to do that visualization in my head.
Mhm. Mhm. No, absolutely. I took my son there because he had a birthday gift card, and to me, I'm just extremely overwhelmed with choice. I'm someone that's like, give me 2 cereals, and then I'll make a choice. I can't have 15 cereals. Like that is just overwhelming to me. So, I think that's kind of why I like online shopping. For some reason, it's like Instagram tells me what I like, and I'm like, yes, I do like that dress. I'm going to put that on my wish list. And to me, it's not like going to the store and sorting through. That's just, again, my personality at this point. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, is there any kind of a framework for people who do maybe want a little bit more structure of like, how do I approach decluttering or this kind of minimalist mindset throughout the new year? Do you have a framework that you would suggest they take to actually see that progress happen?
I mean, I don't necessarily have a framework. I think that if you're talking about specifics of decluttering, it's always been helpful for me to just pull everything out. The things that you absolutely love right away, those are not necessarily negotiable. And then you have this like pile of maybe like, yeah, it's out. And then you have this limbo pile. So what I've done with that like middle pile is I invite friends over to kind of help me go through, and or your husband. If you have a husband that's going to be honest with you about the clothes that you have. But like my husband will be like, you kind of have something like that. Like you don't need that anymore. So even if you can invite a friend over for drinks and say like, hey, I want you to help me go through my kitchen. I'll make you a cocktail. And then you can help me go through like, is this necessary? Or like, help me sort through some of these things. And so I think doing it, again, I don't have a framework. It's just do what works best for you to actually have sustainable change. But I like involving my friends in that or my sister in that. And so, yeah, there are, even in my book, I didn't like write a guide. It's not a how to, it's more about the mindset. And so to me, I'm like, if you really don't get your mind right, none of this is none of what you and I talked about today will stick. It's just going to be this idea that sounds lovely, but you never actually implement. So do what works best for you. Google it, chat GPT it. These are just tips that have worked for me.
Yeah. I love that. What I'm hearing is you're like, just start. You just got to do it. It's not a sexy answer. And there
Mhm.
are different frameworks. You can, every Saturday set aside 2 hours.
Sure.
Or, I had Tyler Moore from Tidy Dad on the
Yeah. Mhm.
podcast just recently. And he's got this great decluttering calendar where like what items to focus on month by month,
Mhm.
which is pretty cool too. I will link his book in the show notes here as well, because that's great. Along with obviously Diane's book will be there too. But there are those frameworks, but no framework is going to work unless you just do it. And like
Yeah.
you said, if you don't have that mindset of your why, of figuring out exactly why this is important to you and really kind of viewing everything with that mindset, then you're never going to start. The reason that I still go into my closet and pull things out is because my brain is now conditioned to have a minimalist mindset. And so I'm
Mhm.
not trying to always find the time anymore. That
Mhm.
is important to actually set aside time. I always say, put it on your calendar if you can. However, I don't really have to do that anymore because I'm so into the minimalist mindset that when I walk into my closet now, I see too much. This is
Mhm.
excessive. Let me just pull a couple things out. And it just happens
Mhm.
kind of in the moment more. And
Mhm.
so to encourage you that at the beginning, you might need to have some more structure and kind of force your habit to begin with the decluttering process, especially if you have a lot. But the more you adopt this minimalist mindset, the less it'll feel like this big drag or this big push. And it'll
Mhm.
just feel like something you naturally do because you see things with a new perspective.
Yeah. I will say the few times that I have gone through, and I in certain ways would like to get into helping people move the needle in their own lives. But one thing that I will say I have done is you just go through and assess the pain points. So I helped someone and we just walked around her house and she's like, yeah, I don't like this laundry pile. And to me, I was like, you have way too many clothes. Like your laundry pile is unbearable because and you can't stay on top of it, one, because it is overwhelming. But two, I'm like, you don't need to have this many clothes that you're washing. Like have a handful of clothes. Like to me, I do a load of laundry every single day and we can just kind of stay on top of it that way. So in assessing, even like assessing yourself for a week and just noticing like, okay, we're really struggling to get out the door. What systems do I need to put into place in the entryway? What do I need to take away? There's too much for my kids to decide on. Like my kids each have one coat. They grab their coat, they have their shoes. So really narrowing down those spaces too can maybe I don't have a framework, but that's noticing, assessing, and then making the change is helpful.
I mean, that sums it up. Notice it, assess it, and make the change. That's going to help you. So, I'm going to end with this question. Besides living with less from a physical standpoint with our belongings, what are some mindsets that you think are worth adopting for 2025 and beyond?
Yeah, I think looking back to my last several years, I would just say it's okay to get radically honest with yourself and not like what you see, not liking how you've spent your money, maybe the mom that you've become, the friend that you've become. But to me, time's going to continue to pass. So don't allow that like to wallow in that. Allow it again, use it as evidence to say, I want to make a change. And it's okay that I was this way. I don't have to be this person tonight or tomorrow. And I think that sustainable change doesn't come from like forcing ourselves into submission with negative mindsets. I guess I just give myself a lot more grace now, and I give people in my life a lot more grace because it's like I've made every mistake in the book. And so if we kind of just have we're always learning, we're always growing. There's no like destination to what a totally decluttered house looks like. There's no destination of what we want our bodies to look like, what a good mom looks like. We're just like, again, assessing, noticing, and making changes. Like to me, that's a grace-filled, content life that I want to continue to lead.
That is so encouraging. Yeah, just doing the next right thing, I would say. It kind of sums that up. That's so great. Alrighty, now the 2 questions that I ask everyone. The first one is, what is something that you are currently paring down?
What am I currently paring down? Well, now I'm coming out of, I do photography on the side. And now that I'm coming out of my busy season, I think I'm just kind of paring down what I'm saying yes to, because I just feel a little bit neurotic coming out of the fall season. And so to me, I'm like, I want margin in my January and my February. So just not saying yes to as many opportunities and things on the schedule. That's what I'm paring down.
Perfect. I think we probably all need that after the holidays.
Oh my gosh, absolutely.
All right. And what is something that you are looking forward to?
I am looking forward to the launch of the new show, but also, I don't know, I'm looking forward to the season with my kids. I feel like I'm no longer having to keep everyone from death because they're so little and being insane. And so to me, I'm like, I can just kind of enjoy you, not necessarily as friends, but it's just this really sweet season that I have with them right now. And I'm looking forward to continuing, I guess, that growth and evolution with them as well.
Oh, it's so cool. My 7-year-old, like the fact that now I can be like, yes, you can stay up till 9:30 with me and watch Dancing with the Stars with me.
Oh yeah.
It's like, oh, it's magical, and know that that's not going to set their whole day off tomorrow, and that like they'll actually get into it and understand what's going on, and they're not going to be running around the kitchen while you're trying to watch the show. You know what I mean? Like, or we read the first Harry Potter book together.
Yeah.
Like, I totally know what you're saying. It's a really special season. They're all special seasons. Okay,
yeah,
but
it's all very bittersweet. But yeah, I'm like, we can play card games now. We can play board games. Like, there's just a lot more I feel like that we can do, and it's kind of fun.
Yes. Oh, love it. All right. Well, where can everyone find you online? I know with the new podcast coming out, maybe I can link both Minimalist Moms and the new Intentional podcast.
It'll be in the feed. So Minimalist Moms will turn into, at the end of January, a Clear Intention. So if you're following Minimalist Moms, you'll just start to see those episodes in your feed. So but yeah, it's at Minimalist Moms Podcast. Got to figure out what to do with that account name, but you can likely find me there. You'll get direction regardless of with the show transition. But Minimalist Moms Podcast. My book is Minimalist Moms: Living and Parenting with Simplicity, and I'm at Diane_Boden if you're interested in just the things that I do in my day to day.
Awesome. I'll have that all in the show notes. Thank you so much for being here, Diane. This was really fun.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I hope it was helpful to people.
You just listened to an episode of Paring Down with me, Shannon Leyko. If you enjoyed the show, it would mean the world if you can leave a review wherever you listen and share this episode with a friend. Those reviews really are what keeps a podcast on its feet for the long haul, and I will read every single one with a huge smile on my face. So thank you ahead of time. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to hit subscribe. Also, be sure to follow along on Instagram at paring_down, where I offer lots of tips and inspiration for paring down, along with what's new here on the podcast. Till next time.